All right, we are back. Falcons Central Radio Show. I'm Aaron Freeman. That's Scott Karasik. So, Scott, we got basically, 10 days ago till 9 days ago till training camp starts? We're getting there slowly and surely. And, today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about, the talk of Roddy White's contract extension. We'll finish up our positional breakdown with the safeties. Still working to see if I can get Scott to talk about long snappers next week, and then we'll get your Falcons mailbag questions at the end of the show.
Here's my analysis on long snappers. They take the ball and they throw it through their legs.
All right. Well, I think we can get a whole hour out of that next week. But
I can tell you the best one on the Falcons roster is Josh Harris.
Oh, really?
He's also the only one on the Falcons roster.
Yeah. So Scott, before we get to Roddy's contract extension, besides the obvious answer about Hard Knocks, what is the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to for training camp?
I guess you could say the thing that I want to see is I want to see the offensive line gel, and I want to see them kind of work together. And I realize that our boy Ryan's going to hate me saying this, but I can't wait to see what Joe Hawley does with the guys around him in preseason. What even Peter Kahns does with the guys around him in preseason, because this is the best line that we've seen Atlanta have in years.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolute years. Like, this might even be a better line than it probably is a better line than 2010. Probably a better line than 2008. Probably a better line than pretty much anyone in Falcons history, if it all comes to the full fruition. If everybody hits their potential, then 98. It could be even better than that, which I would say is the best Falcons line in history. That's just my thought there.
Well, yeah, I think you hit that interesting point, because I think this season really, the Falcons if the Falcons are really good this year, I think it's going to be because of what you said, and all 5 offensive linemen start all 16 games. Sam Baker is 2012 form or even better. Jake Matthews is a good rookie tackle as opposed to your average rookie tackle. John Asamoah picks up where he left off 2 years ago in Kansas City when he was one of the best guards in the league. Blaylock is even better than he was last year, which I think last year was his best season. And Hawley is, basically, what our friend Ryan doesn't think he's going to be, and is a really good center. And I think if that happens, then everything is going to click for the Falcons offense. Matt Ryan's going to have plenty of time to throw the ball. The running game's going to work. And if the offense can score points, it can mask some question marks about the defense, because everybody's still a little concerned about that pass rush. You don't want to get into a situation where, if the Falcons have a lead, then it helps a pass rush because our guys can pin their ears back because the other team's going to be throwing. So that makes
and if they stop the run.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. If the Falcons can stop the run, the pass rush will come. As crazy as it sounds, that's the best way to put it. Anytime you have big, fat, just big old guys like Paul Soliai and Tyson Jackson and John Babineau and Rashid Hageman and Corey Peters when he's healthy, and you just rotate those. Oh, and Malachi Goodman, who's now up to 295. And you're rotating basically 6 guys who are all averaging about 320 pounds. And you keep rotating them in and out, keeping them fresh, and you have at least 3 of them on the field at one point, at any point in time. you're going to get a lot of open lanes for rushing. You're going to get a lot of open lanes for linebackers to go in and smack a running back. When I say rushing, I mean pass rushing. So, you want that interior lane. You have Tyson Jackson on the left. You have Paul Soliai in the 1, Tyson Jackson on the 5. Have each of them eat a double team and send Warlow into that gap that's going to be created. If he gets hit by a fullback, whatever. No big deal. You're going to have somebody coming around the other side. You're going to have a lot of pass rush coming from normally just 4 or 5 guys rushing the passer when you've got guys who can eat double teams. That's one thing the Falcons didn't really have. They did have one guy who could eat double teams in Corey Peters. They did have one guy who could penetrate in John Babineau. But they didn't have the combination of guys who could eat double teams, who could penetrate through the hole, who could blitz. They've been building this Mike Nolan defense for years, and it feels like they finally kind of got all the pieces together. They just need to execute. And I think if there was a group that was going to execute, it's this group. I really like Massaquoi in that primary pass rush role. I really, really like Paul Warlow with the green dot on his helmet covering the center of the field. I really like Joplo Bartu busting his ass, flying around the field. And then Croy Bierman doing what Croy Bierman does and just being that basically Swiss Army knife is great. But he finally has some guys behind him who can do the same role. He's got Bartu who can help out in that same role. We've got Prince Shembo who can play the inside if Bartu has to move out. You can move Warlow into Bartu's side of the field on the weak inside role. I mean, you've got a lot of talent there and a lot of things you can do with that talent.
Okay, well put. Let's talk a little bit about Roddy's contract extension. I guess there isn't a whole lot to talk about, so let's talk a little bit about whether or not you think Roddy, when will he get his contract extension? I think it's not really a question of if, but it's when. Do you think a deal will get done before training camp?
I don't think a deal will get done until halfway through training camp, honestly. And it won't be because Atlanta's not trying to do it or Roddy's not trying to do it. It'll be because they're just going to be kind of $1,000 or $1 million off here and $500,000 there and something here and something there. I mean, this clause here, that clause there. There's all sorts of different things that'll affect it. And I do think that it'll get done before the start of the season. I just don't think it'll get done right away.
Okay.
It's going to make sense, though. If it does get done, the best structure I can think of is Reggie Wayne's.
Uh-huh. I think Wayne was 3 years, $17.5 million, about 7.5 guaranteed.
Yeah, so basically I would say give Roddy a little bit more than that based on inflation. 2 years worth of inflation. Give Roddy 3 years, 18.5 or 19 million. I would say 18.5, so it's 18.5, so it's a little easier to split up. Or 18.75, so it's easier to split up. Give him, $8.5 million guaranteed, and then just work it that way. And you'd end up with a very fair deal for Roddy White. Almost the exact same structure, though. Roster bonus that second year, maybe even a roster bonus the third year. I mean, Reggie Wayne's probably not playing after this year. He'll be 36 years old. After 14 years in the NFL, taking beatings, he'll be done.
Well, I think Roddy's deal will get done probably a little sooner than you think. I just think Arthur Blank is going to be like, yeah, I want to get the deal done before Hard Knocks airs, so we can have that storyline or whatever. Just because I think Arthur Blank is a businessman. So I would guess about 2 weeks. No later than 2 weeks from now. I think with where his price tag is going to be, I think you're right, a little north of Reggie Wayne. I think it's probably going to be a little bit more north of Reggie Wayne, just because I think it's going to be part of, like, this is the last contract we're going to give you, Roddy. We want you to finish out this contract as a Falcon, and we'll pay you a little bit extra just for your long years of service. So I'm thinking maybe like 3 years, $22 million, and maybe like 15 of it guaranteed or something like that. But like what you said about where the Reggie Wayne deal is, I think you're pretty much right. Like, if the Falcons just offered him the Reggie Wayne deal, there really isn't a whole lot Roddy can do to like turn it down, because he doesn't really have a ton of leverage. Because when you look at the Reggie Wayne deal, he signed it when he was age 33. You look at the deal Steve Smith signed this offseason, he was 34. Steve Smith's deal was like 3 years, $12 million, $3.5 million guaranteed. So he didn't even get Reggie Wayne money. And so Roddy's going to be 33 next offseason if he doesn't get a contract extension and be a free agent. And there's just not a whole lot of money for 33-year-old wide receivers, even ones as good as we think Roddy is. So it's just going to be like, basically, if he gets a Reggie Wayne deal, offer Reggie Wayne or even less than that, then I don't really see Roddy has any choice but to take it, because it's not like the market's going to be even favorable come March of next year.
Oh, no. If anything, the market's going to be way less than the Reggie Wayne deal. I'm thinking if he hits the open market, he's seeing maybe 3 years, 12 max.
Yeah.
Like, absolute best. Which, that's not what he wants, and that's not what Atlanta wants. I mean, yeah, they probably do want to pay him 3 years, $12 million, but let's be honest here. He's Roddy White. Mm-hmm. He's arguably the best wide receiver in franchise history. You want him to retire a Falcon. I think he's got a potential Hall of Fame career.
We talked about that last week, yeah.
I think he's got a potential Hall of Fame career. Because even though he may not have ever been the number one wide receiver in the league at any given time, by anybody's rankings, like, of individual receivers, he was always in the top 5. I'd say from 2007 until 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say very few people wouldn't have had him in the top 5 in those years.
Definitely.
And then this year was the year that he was going to be, in the top 10 and just kind of starting to fall out. But 2007 to 12, he showed. I mean, he had friggin' Joey Harrington throwing him the ball in 2007. Yep. And he still somehow put up 1,200 yards. With Matt Ryan as his quarterback, he never had a season under, 1,150 yards and 7 touchdowns and 85 catches. Like, he's guaranteed, like, outside of last year when he was injured for pretty much the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Had he just taken those first, 4 weeks off, I feel like last year would have been completely different.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they would have at least had a true number 1 and a mediocre number 2.
Yep.
Sorry, Harry Douglas, if you're watching, but that's what most of us think of you, and there's nothing wrong with being a mediocre number 2 and a mediocre and an average number 3 and a good to great number 4 and a guy who should never be a number 1.
Yeah.
My good friend Ben Natan said yesterday, it may have been the day before, but it was either yesterday or the day before. Has there ever been a wide receiver worse than Harry Douglas who somehow hit 1,000 yards? And when you start seeing names like Mike Fury and Kevin Curtis pop up, something's messed up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
there's not really, Steve Breston. Let's see who else gets listed. Brandon Stokes.
Breston was pretty good in Arizona.
He really wasn't.
He was, that 1 year they went to the Super Bowl, he was pretty good that year.
All right, Peerless Price. Let's see. Guys who have 1,000 yards in a season. Amazingly, Fred Biletnikoff only had one 1,000-yard season, yet he's got an award named after him.
Well, didn't he have that 1,000-yard season in like 1965 when no one had 1,000-yard seasons?
68 when no one had him.
Yeah.
So that's fair. Drew Bennett in Tennessee in
Ooh,
04.
Hmm.
Nate Burleson in Minnesota in 04.
Yeah, Burleson was decent back then.
Like, Dallas Clark is on this list of guys who have 1,000-yard seasons, but he was a tight end, and it was in 09. And you're like, he was pretty good in 09.
Yeah.
But, let's see. Jericho Cotchery. Kevin.
The Jets?
Braylon Edwards, who outside of his rookie season was garbage. Bobby Ingram, okay, had an 1,000-yard season in 2007. Like, right at the end of his career, magically had 1,000 yards.
Is that with the Bears?
That was with the Bears. No, that wasn't even with the Bears. That was with the Seahawks.
No.
His third to last year, he had 94 catches, 1,147 yards. It was like, hey, I'm the only one healthy and no one else can catch. So, yeah, Harry Douglas was pretty bad compared. Like, when you're being compared to those guys, it's like, oh, okay. So.
It was the worst 1,000-yard receiver in 2013. I can say that.
Let's move on. Let's go to our safeties.
All right.
You got William Moore, who definitely a starter.
Yes.
Dwight Lowery, Desmond Southward, free safety battle. I think that's going to last a long time. Put it this way. It's going to last a long, long time.
I think it's 100% Lowry locked it up. I just can't see Southwood starting this year at all. I don't think he's ready.
I don't think he's ready, but I think he's going to see snaps.
He'll probably see snaps because safeties get hurt all the time. Like, on average, William Moore and Dwight Lowery combined, like, average missing, like, 7 games a year. So he'll probably play this year. He might even play more than Lowery if, injuries crop up. But, I don't think there's a chance he starts week 1 unless the Falcons are in real dire straits.
I don't think he starts week 1, but I think that battle lasts, like, at least halfway through the season. And I think they split a lot of time this year.
Okay.
A lot of time. I think at worst, when the Falcons run a lot of the Wolverine three safety sets, you see Southward, Lowery, and Moore on the field. Because Southward can at least tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a young Thomas Deku before Deku became a pussy.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
Back when Deku kind of looked like he could hit a little bit, kind of wasn't afraid to go after people in the head, just kind of knock people around. He went for the big hit, didn't really wrap up well, but at least he was hitting people. Lately, he just looked like he was a pussy, which makes me happy he's on the Panthers. And then Mata and Ishmael get to battle for that backup strong safety spot. I know you're wanting to see a signing there, but I don't see the need for one.
I think they're going to get a strong safety. I don't think Southward is ready to be that guy. Because in the event that Lowry or Moore do get hurt for an extended period of time, I think you need to have somebody in there with actual NFL experience.
I think Mata could do it, and I think Kamal Ishmael could do it. And I think if anybody, I'm a big believer in Kamal Ishmael. I think he's a lot better than people have given him credit for. I watched a lot of Central Florida's tape this past offseason when he was there, just trying to kind of get an idea of what he's doing. And he's instinctual. He can hit. He's not going to be a 10 interception like Jarris Bird type. He doesn't have those kind of instincts. But he's not going to get destroyed either. he's also going to make every tackle you throw his way. He's not going to knock the ball out, but he's still going to knock people down. He doesn't miss tackles. The only time I saw him miss, quote-unquote, a tackle was when he got ran over by a guy who was 248 pounds.
Yeah.
Chad Abram from FSU destroyed him.
Well, you know, I think Ishmael. I think Ishmael's a good player. I just think his skills don't translate to the NFL. Like the thing you say, he's a good tackler. I agree. You know, I thought Charles Mitchell was a good tackler, but you got to have range and you got to be able to cover in the NFL. Safety is only as good as his coverage skills, and I just don't think Ishmael has enough there to really be a guy that you can count on to do much more than play special teams. I don't know. That's just me, though.
I do think he's better than you're giving him credit for, but it is what it is. I like Ishmael. I think he'd shock you if he had to play extended time.
Okay.
I really do.
Scott, okay, you mentioned Zeke Mata, but it doesn't sound optimistic that Zeke Mata is going to play this year because of that neck injury. Like, he hasn't been officially ruled out, but I don't know. It just doesn't, you know, a guy that has a safety with a neck injury who was supposed to heal in 6 weeks and didn't heal in 6 months doesn't sound too promising.
Let's put it this way. There's no such thing as a minor spine injury.
Yeah.
Those don't exist. Even a fracture to a vertebrae, or even even a hairline, just like a little crack in the vertebrae, that's a big issue. That could paralyze you. Like, it's basic anatomy. The entire spinal column the entire nerve system goes right down the middle of your spinal column. And if anything gets messed up in that area, you have numbness in your feet. Like, there's all sorts of different things that could change just like that with any sort of spinal injury. And anytime I see that any football player has one, it scares the hell out of me. Because I'm like, that could be this dude's career.
Yep.
That could easily be this dude's career.
And that's one of the reasons why I think the Falcons will sign somebody. I don't see a true strong safety on the roster. Like, I guess Ishmael could play it. I know Southward got some snaps, but like, I think you got to get a body in there. Now, maybe the body doesn't make the team. The guy I've thrown out there on Twitter a couple of times, Reed Doty from the Redskins, special teams guy. He's started, 60 games over the last couple of years because the Redskins secondary is terrible. But, like, he can play. Scott's not a fan.
The Redskins secondary? No. They blow.
They do?
Let's put it this way. Brandon Merriweather is their best player. I'd rather see Quentin Michael than Reed Doty.
No, that's a fair point. I would rather see
Jeremiah Bell than Reed Doty. I'd rather see Ed Reed than Reed Doty. I'd rather see Steve Gregory than Reed Doty. I'd rather see Jim Linehart than Reed Doty.
That's fair. They're all better football players, but the difference between them and Reed Doty is Reed Doty's a great special teams guy. Special teams.
Jim Linehart and Steve Gregory are great special teams guys. Jeremiah Bell made rosters for being a special teams guy.
Gregory hasn't played a lot of special teams over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, because he's been starting for a team with a worse safety situation than pretty much any in the league in the Patriots. Because the one position they don't know how to draft is safety. Ever since good old Thomas Dimitroff left. They've moved Devin McCourty, a very good cornerback, to safety. Then Deron Harmon was drafted last year, way too high. Tavon Wilson drafted way too high. Nate Ebner shouldn't have even been drafted. On the flip side, Atlanta safeties, William Moore, went to a Pro Bowl. Deservedly went to a Pro Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Deku had 6 interceptions in a year and looked like a legitimate Pro Bowl player for one season of his career.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012, I'd say he looked like a Pro Bowler.
More
Desmond
so.
Howard has a lot of potential. Zeke Mata, Kamal Ishmael, worst case scenario for them. They're good depth guys who can play a couple games here and there. Like, Mata shouldn't start a whole season, but if he had to play 2 games again this year like he did last year, would you really freak out that much?
Well, if we're playing the Saints, I would, but,
Yeah, but if it's like 2 bottom feeders like it was last year.
Yeah.
He's not going to lose the game for you. He might give up a touchdown, but it's not going to be like the game-clinching touchdown.
Maybe. I don't know. So, Scott, what about the rest of these safeties on the roster? Kamari McFadden, Sean Baker. Any chance of them making the roster?
I like Kamari McFadden because he's got cornerback speed. He's got great range. But I don't see him making the roster just because he's not a great tackler right now. Now, that is something that you can really kind of work on. He's got the range. He's got some solid instincts. He's got some good speed. But I just don't see him, at least legitimately, making the roster long term. He's going to be like a practice squad guy. Maybe he'll make the edge. Sean Baker is just, whatever. He's garbage.
Yeah.
He's a camp body. I realized, I'm a little harsh on the team this year. I don't have much optimism for a lot of these late round, or how do I put this? I just have a hard time with it. I don't think that there's anything salvageable about his game. Some guys are just camp bodies. Some guys are just practice bodies for the practice squad, and that's all they'll ever be good for. And every team needs it. They need that scout body that they can just beat up.
Mm-hmm. So, Scott, another question I want to ask you about the safety position. Are the Falcons, we've seen glimpses of it here and there, but are the Falcons going to start to play a lot more dime and big nickel this year and put 3 safeties on the field as opposed to in the past?
They should play more dime, but it should be 3-3 dime, not 4-2. Not 4 corners and 2 safeties. It should be 3 safeties, 3 corners. But they don't have the personnel for it unless they play a lot of southward. Honestly, I'd rather see them play a lot of McLean and Wilson, or McLean and Arenas, whoever makes the roster, unless Ricardo Allen's ready to go. If Ricardo Allen's ready to go, play him. Because the guy's a ball hawk. He's a really intelligent, short area kind of player.
Okay. So, Scott, you weren't that confident in Lowry running away with the free safety spot. But if he does, or whatever happens at free safety, I guess, do you think the Falcons are going to get production out of that position? Okay, let's measure it on the Thomas Deku scale. 2012 being the best Thomas Deku, 2009 being the second best Thomas Deku, 2013 being the worst Thomas Deku, and then you can order 2010 and 2011 anywhere you want, in the middle somewhere. What sort of production do you think the Falcons will get out of free safety this year? Is it going to be 2012 Deku, 2013 Deku, somewhere in the middle? What do you think?
Can I use a different player who can actually tackle?
Okay, go right ahead.
How about 2004, 2005 Keon Carpenter?
Okay.
The 2-3 interceptions, a bunch of tackles. That's about it. couple pass deflections, couple interceptions, bunch of tackles. That's it.
So the good Keon Carpenter, not the bad one that we dumped to bring in Chris Crocker.
Good Keon Carpenter, good Chris Crocker, good like Lawyer Malloy, good like Eric Campbell, not Eric Campbell, Eric who's the guy that they had for a year in 2008? I'm blanking.
Coleman.
Eric Coleman. Yeah. Good Eric Coleman, like that kind of guy for a year.
Okay.
That's what you're gonna get out of Dwight Lowery. That's like the best case scenario. A very average NFL safety. He's not going to lose you games. He's not going to win you games. He's just going to kind of be there. He's not going to get destroyed, but he's still going to give up a couple touchdowns. He's not going to, like, he's average. Desmond Southward has potential to be great. Like, just the physical, athletic potential that he has, he could be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I like Southwood's upside. I just think it's going to take him. He's going to need to sit the bench at least 1 year because, just all the things that he had to do with Wisconsin.
He doesn't learn anything from being on the bench, though. Like as much as
he just has to get he has to learn. He has to get comfortable. Like it's hard to explain, but it's just like, to me, throwing him out to the wolves when his man coverage technique, he hasn't really had to make secondary calls or anything like that. It's just a whole lot of stuff that you're just throwing too much at him. Let him spend this year getting comfortable, living in Atlanta, dealing with the playbook, transitioning to being a pro player, and then next year let him compete for that starting job, or where I think he will actually be in a position where he can actually win it. Like this year, I just think he needs a redshirt season.
No, I don't think that's an issue. I don't think that a redshirt season is the way to go either. I'm not saying play him every single solitary snap. I'm saying play him 5 to 10 snaps a game. Use him at nickel a little bit. Use him at, that third safety. Let him kind of get the feel for the NFL. But don't put him in, like, crucial 3rd and 10 situations. I'm not saying do that. I'm saying, like, 1st and 10 at the 20. Throw him out on the field. Have him blitz. 1st and 10 at the 50. Why not have him play a deep coverage once? Just give him a couple different scenarios. I'm not saying throw him out there on key 3rd downs. Throw him out there on, important red zone plays. I'm saying just put him out there, let him get a feel for the game, 5 to 10 plays a game, for about the first 8 to 10 games of the season. And then start working him in more.
Okay.
Don't let him play anything past 2nd down and, 8. Put him in situations he can handle. Like a 3rd and 12. You're not putting him on the field there because you're going to attack him. But 2nd and 14, yeah, throw him in. What's the worst that can happen? They're not going to go deep just because Desmond Southward's there. The dude's got better range than William Moore. The dude's got better range than almost any safety in the league right now. He's fast, really fast on the field.
Mm-hmm.
The issue that he has is he doesn't see a lot of situations, so he's not instinctual yet.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I think he should sit. But if he can get some reps, get some opportunities, I wouldn't be against it. But I just I think if the Falcons think he's going to be ready to start early in the season, play real long minutes, I think they're setting themselves up because I think if you put him on the field with William Moore right now, that's just not a good combination because you have 2 safeties, neither of them are good in man coverage yet. And Southwood has the potential to be a good man coverage safety, but he's not there yet because he's only really done it 1 year. And he
And
wasn't.
that's not really William Moore's game.
Yeah.
Never really has been.
Yeah. That's why they got Lowry, because he's got cornerback skills, or cornerback history, I should say. Obviously, if he had cornerback skills, he'd still be playing cornerback. But,
See, I don't even know if Lowry's that good at man coverage. Like, I'm not a. I know you love him. I just don't understand.
I think my love for Lowry is because I think he was a good player in Jacksonville, but because he played for the Jaguars, he played in obscurity and no one realized he was good. And my personal opinion is I would have taken any of the 3 Dwight Lowry seasons in Jacksonville over any of the Thomas DeCoos seasons here in Atlanta, even the Pro Bowl year. I think he was a better player. But, because he played in Jacksonville, it's the same thing with Darryl Smith. Darryl Smith was one of the league's best linebackers for like 7 years, but no one knew who he was because he played for the Jaguars.
Okay, hold on. Darryl Smith has always been my boy. But that's also because Darryl Smith went to Georgia Tech. So I've always been a fan of Darryl Smith. I thought he was going to be good when he was at Tech, and I was like, man, this guy's going to blow up the league when he finally gets in. Always liked Darryl Smith. I'm glad he finally started showing up. It took him long enough.
Well, Darryl Smith's always been a good player. It's just no one knew it because he played for the Jaguars.
He was also kind of misfit in that Jaguar scheme. He's better as an inside linebacker, and they're playing him at weak side.
He played all 3 spots there.
Well, yeah, but he mainly played weak side. Like, most of his snaps throughout the years were at weak side. And that wasn't really his game. His game was almost always inside, mixing it up, destroying people. But, 2012, they played him on the strong side when he was healthy for 2 games. They continually played him on the weak side, strong side, flipped him in 11. They didn't really have a side for him in 2010. And then they moved him all over the place in 2009. I don't know. Smith has always been one of my favorite players, though. Always. He was always a guy that I wanted Atlanta to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't sign him last year. Because I was like, man, you want good depth. You go get Darryl Smith. Guarantee you he could start over Akeem Dent.
Mm-hmm.
But how much would it have pissed Dent off to get replaced by a Georgia Tech player?
Probably a good bit. But, just getting back to Lowry, I think it's the same situation. Like, when you're a good player on a bad team, no one knows it. Like, Paul Posluszny was a good player in Buffalo for 4 or 5 years. No one knew it because he played for the Bills when the Bills were terrible. Still kind of terrible, but less terrible. It's just one of those things now you could have, I can't think of who plays for the Jaguars other than Chris Clemens or something. But Chris Clemens could have 15 sacks this year in Jacksonville, and no one would know about it because he plays for the Jaguars. It's just the way it is. When you play for a bad team and you're a good player on a bad team, no one cares. Unless you're putting up fantasy numbers like Josh Gordon.
Okay, to be fair, Josh Gordon is a very good player.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But, we only know about Josh Gordon because he's a wide receiver and people have him on the fantasy team.
Idiot.
Like myself, I won a championship thanks to Josh Gordon. But it's just, when you're some obscure free safety on a bad team, no one knew about T.J. Ward really until, last year. But he's been good in Cleveland for, 3 or 4 years now. Kind of the same way with Dwight Lowry. I'm optimistic that now that he's on Atlanta, playing in a larger market against, on a good team, people will start to appreciate his abilities more. And that's one of the reasons why I'm in love with him.
I'm just not a fan.
Okay.
I'm also not a fan of big head injuries and.
That's it. That's very fair.
Head injuries drive me crazy.
All right, Scott, you got anything more before we get into the mailbag?
No, let's go to the mailbag.
All right. We got 2 questions from our good buddy Smorgasbord9. Gets a mailbag question pretty much every week. And Falcons in 5, Matt. The first one from Smorgasbord9 is, can we hurry up and sign Hausler already? Who are the outside linebackers if Shimbo is an inside linebacker? So it's 2 questions on 1 question. So.
Why would we go sign Hausler? I don't understand. Am I missing something here?
The Rob Hausler love fest is a little weird. You know, Hausler is a very good athlete. You know, you could probably make the argument he's probably one of the 5 or 6 best athletes playing tight end in the league. But it's not a good tight end. And the fact that right now for the Arizona Cardinals, he's the 4th-string guy behind, 3, with the exception of Troy Nicholas, 2 other journeymen, and Jarlon Carlson, and I don't even know who the other guy is. Jake Ballard. And you look at those 3 guys, Carlson, Nicholas, and Ballard, the things that they really have in common is they're not that athletic. Carlson's a little athletic. Nicholas is a little athletic. But when you have a guy like Hausler who's super athletic, the fact that he's 4th-string behind 3 really okay athletes says something else is missing. And that's something else for Hausler that he can't catch. And
I was going to say talent, but that works too.
Got to catch. So, it's one of those things where there's talk that Hausler might get cut or traded or something, and if the Cardinals cut him, at the end of training camp and the Falcons scoop him up on waivers, sure. He's better than Mickey Schuler. I don't know if he's going to be better than Levine Toilolo or Levine Toilolo. And I don't really think Levine Toilolo is going to be all that good this year. So, that is what it is.
Yeah, I don't see anything there, honestly. Like, I wish I saw the Hausler love, too. I mean, mediocre at best.
The second part of Smorgasbord next question, apparently I guess he didn't watch our show 2 weeks ago. He asks, who are the outside linebackers if Shimbo is an inside linebacker?
I mean, if Shimbo wins inside and Bierman goes down, Bartu's going to play out there. But I think you're going to see, if all Falcons linebackers are healthy, you're going to see some sets where you have Bartu outside, Shimbo inside, and, Massacre or OC on the other side. But you'll see all sorts of different things. All sorts of different things. You'll see all sorts of different sets, all that stuff.
Yeah. The beauty of the linebacker position is that you don't really need more than 2. You can just play nickel all the time. So, as long as Warlow and you have Warlow and take your pick of anybody else, you're kind of good at linebacker. You just play nickel.
See, I say Warlow Bartu is the best pick that you can set up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly the best setup that you can have. It's the only one that really makes sense.
Okay. We got another question from Smorgasbord9. He asks, if Smitty and TD get fired, are the replacements already in-house, a la Mike Nolan and Scott Pioli?
I'd say no at this point.
Are you doing it, Josh?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't, I respect Mike Nolan a ton as a defensive coordinator, but I don't think he's going to get another chance as a head coach. Those 49er teams were terrible. Like, when Mike Singletary is an upgrade over you as a head coach, you're not a good head coach.
Nolan's a defensive coordinator. Let him stay defensive coordinator. There's a reason why he didn't take head coaching jobs. He didn't want to be a head coach. It's not his game. It's not his cup of tea. Some guys are happy sitting in the booth designing a defense and not worrying about the other half of the team. Mike Nolan's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Dirk Cutter, on the other hand, he should probably go. He's probably a better head coach than a coordinator. I'd love to see a creative offensive mind with the Falcons' talent.
I would too.
I'll put it that way. I would love to see a very creative offensive mind with the Falcons' talent.
What are your thoughts on Pioli as a possible Dimitrov replacement?
I think it'd be stupid. I honestly do. I think you have to. If you're going to do anything different, you have to go out of house. You can't keep. If you're going to fire Dimitrov, you got to just clean house.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to fire Smitty, you got to just clean house. Go out and get Rex Ryan. I realize that might seem a little crazy to some, but go out and get Rex Ryan. Pay him whatever it's going to cost. You want something that's going to be different in Atlanta? You got to change the attitude from the top down? Rex Ryan's the guy. You give Rex Ryan a competent quarterback like Matt Ryan, you've already got an offensive line built for Matt Ryan. Find a GM who understands skill positions, go from there. Because Rex Ryan understands the lines.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say up front, his lines are some of the toughest in the league. If Ryan would have gotten fired and taken a defensive coordinator spot or taken a defensive line coach spot or something like that, you bring him in a heartbeat. Because he's friggin' Rex Ryan. And you know the Rob Ryan defense like that the minute he does that. Because you go, oh yeah, my brother does this. Oh yeah, my brother does that. Oh yeah, my brother does this, this, and this. Yeah, sometimes he shifts to 5 lineman sets. You know how to beat a Ryan brother? You get another Ryan brother.
Yep.
Preferably the older one.
Yeah, I think Pioli's going to have a tough time getting another GM gig, at least in the near future.
I get 3 GM gigs. I'll put it that way.
I just think what happened in Kansas City, or allegedly happened in Kansas City, I guess, it just leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. I think after Pioli's done in Atlanta, whenever the case that is, next year, 5 years from now, he'll probably go back to the Patriots for a couple of years, and then maybe he'll be able to get another GM job. People will have forgotten, basically how that whole Kansas City thing went down. But if you're right, Scott, if Blank fires these guys, he's cleaning the house, he's bringing in completely new blood. So
completely different personalities too.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the super analytic Thomas Dimitrov type. You're going to have the more gut feel kind of GM like what McKay is.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have that Mike Smith kind of calculated, reserved head coach. You're going to have a crazy madman like Rex Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to, you're probably going to keep some of the assistant coaches. Like, I could see Rex Ryan keeping Mike Nolan because they're friends. I don't see Cutter staying. I could see Keith Armstrong staying because he's one of the best coordinators in the league. I could see Terry Robisky staying. Hell, I thought Terry Robisky probably should have been promoted to offensive coordinator a couple of years back. But he didn't want the job, apparently. But whatever you do, don't give Mike Tice the offensive coordinator role.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's like, love you, Mike Tyson, not your role. Not your role at all. You are not an offensive coordinator. You are an offensive line coach. You are an Alex Gibbs for your career kind of guy. That's your best role. You're a Russ Grimm kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make your legacy that kind of legacy. If you're Mike Tice, you go around, you make every offensive line great.
All right. Matt asks, is Douglas, as in Harry, the most average wide receiver of all time?
He would have to be average to be the most average of all time, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
The most average number 3 wide receiver of all time? Sure. Yeah, I'll agree with that. He's a number 3. That's what he is. He's a number 3 who produces because Matt Ryan's comfortable with him. And that's what I was trying to tell people last year for their fantasy teams. Go out and get Harry Douglas the minute Roddy went down. Because he's going to produce. Harry Douglas had a 1,000-yard season because Roddy White was injured and Julio Jones was injured for almost the entire season. Up until the last 4 games of the year, you wanted one of them. Or you wanted Harry Douglas. Because it was that last 5 games of the year that he did awful. And you're like, how's this guy ever going to hit 1,000 yards? Once he got there.
Well, you say Matt Ryan's comfortable with Harry Douglas. Yeah, to a degree. But I think last year showed the minute Roddy White was healthy and playing, Matt Ryan stopped on the ball at Harry Douglas because he was like, no, he's not good.
Yeah, those last 4 games where Harry Douglas had 2 catches, 5 catches. He had 19 catches over the last 4 games and had 66 the previous 12. So we went from averaging 7 a game to averaging 4 a game. 5 a game in that range. That's a lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
And in the games before Matt Ryan got 100% healthy, 18, 5, 8, 10, 11, 15. It takes you 15 catches. Oh, sorry, 15 targets. My bad. Counting targets. It's been a long day. 12 catches, 3 catches, 7 catches, 6, 9, 6. Lots of catches, not a lot of production. I mean, when you average 12.6 yards a catch, that's one of the lowest I've ever seen. Take out that one long 80-yard touchdown in Tampa Bay. Honestly, take out his 2 long Tampa Bay touchdowns, and what do you really have? You got a very mediocre receiver.
Yes.
Who has just enough speed to make Tampa Bay pay.
Yeah, well, it helps when you're being covered by Leonard Johnson.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, Tampa Bay doesn't want to shut down the entire Falcons offense by putting Darrelle Revis on Harry Douglas.
Yeah. Gotta love Greg Schiano, right?
God, Schiano deserved to be fired when he got hired. He was the worst choice, and you can tell right up front, you're like, oh, this guy's going to screw everything up for Tampa. Don't have to worry about them for 2 years. Maybe even 3 if they're too dumb to let him. They're too dumb to get rid of him.
Yeah. Well, at least Revis is gone. It makes me feel a little bit better.
Greg Schiano was the Jim Mora of Buccaneers head coaches. I feel like that's the best way to put it. Looked really good coming out the gate, really kind of pumped everybody up, had them kind of ready. Like, yeah, this guy's going to do pretty well. Came out, 2012, Tampa Bay wins 6 of their first 8. They look pretty good. And then the wheels fell off the bus. And Tampa reverted back to normal. That Tampa Bay we know and love, that goes 4-12 every year.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, they were 6-4 after the first 10. And all their 4 losses were by a score or less. So they looked like, hey, these guys have potential. And then they lost 5 straight games, including getting destroyed by New Orleans, 41-0, in one of the most hilarious games I've ever watched. Because I think Freeman threw like 5 interceptions.
Well, Scott, I would love to hear you regale me with more of Tampa Bay Buccaneers season, but I think that's all we got for tonight. You know, it tells you when we mine the bottom of the well, I guess. We're talking about Josh Freeman's interceptions. But
things too.
We got one more show till training camp starts, and then finally we can actually talk about actual football, being played, not just guessing at, speculating about what will happen. We'll actually be able to tell you what is happening. But in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. I'm at FalFans. Scott is at Scott Karasik. Hit up the show at Falcons PFC. Don't forget to follow PF Central. Don't forget your mailbag questions. I'm sure we will have plenty to discuss in 2 weeks once training camp starts, but please hit it up with those mailbag questions next week. Ask us all your training camp questions before things get started. So we'll do that. And we'll talk about those long snappers, right, Scott?
Sure, that long snapper.
Yeah. All right.
Because we've only got one.